Issues were being able to read codes on rough surfaces. That was less of a problem for us than our competitors, because our competitors use what's called the first derivative detection, in which they look at the beam going across at an edge, and so they're looking at a first. Good. One of the problems in reading in certain types of surfaces is if the surface is very rough. I used to print some very difficult barcodes on egg cartons, for instance, and these little foam cardboard type egg cartons. And they're difficult to read, more difficult for our competitors than for us. The reason being that the competitors use what's called first derivative detection, where they look for sharp edges, the slope of the signal coming across. As you go from black to white or white to black, there's a distinction there, and they looked at the first derivative of the signal to tell them where the edge is. And that presents a problem if you have a rough surface, because you're always seeing these jagged edges giving you first derivatives. IBM used, at least for their first scanners, used what was called global threshold. And as George Lahr would probably tell you better than I could, global threshold has significantly less problems with the rough surfaces. Oh, I'm no expert in global threshold. Global threshold is just a means of looking at a broader area as you go across and taking more of an average of things instead of looking at just an edge.
Okay.
And so it was, and George Lahr would probably correct me on that, but that's as much as I know about it. And I do know that it had less problems with with rough surfaces than the competitors, which use the first derivative detection. But as we found is usually the case, whenever the competitors had problems, they complained enough to the people who were making labels that the labels were soon changed. Even though we didn't complain, the competitors changed. The competitors caused it to change. Other problems we had were the customers would come in and say, "We're having trouble reading." And they'd say, "Your competitor's not having trouble." Well, I'm sure, I don't know for a fact, but I'm reasonably sure. They said the same thing to the competitor. "We're having trouble reading, but IBM reads okay." One of the worst cases was Tropicana, orange juice. They had red bars on the glass. I said, "It's red bars in the glass. Those red bars are going to look white. Where's your black?" He said, "Oh, that's the orange juice inside." Orange juice doesn't look all that black.
No.
So that was a problem that we had. Eventually, they had to stop making that kind of thing. If you put enough pressure, the people putting barcodes on weren't really too thrilled, simply because, well, they didn't gain anything out of it. And so if they had problems, they would try to point to the scanner people. But there were problems that were in the scanners. We had sunlight problems. We had window problems. Windows were scratching. We used ordinary glass, plain glass to begin with. And we made it easy for them to replace the glass. There was a slot, a small slot on each edge of the frame for the window. And they put something like an Allen wrench in it, and you turn it 90 degrees and pull it out. The only problem we found was that after about a couple of weeks of use, the window was scratched, and everything that went across it, which might be flour and who knows what else, made a great adhesive.
Yeah.
They couldn't get the windows out. But I saw one guy that really had it down pat. He had this rubber suction cup, and he'd go up the window and go, bang! The window would break that adhesive, pop right out. The customers kept saying to us, "You got to solve the scratched window problem." And so we went to a window that had a thin ribbon, about 30 thousandths of an inch ribbon of single crystal sapphire. That is, the sapphire is grown by the so-called Shokowski process, which is they draw very slowly a wire frame. They pull it out of the liquid, heated, melted sapphire, and it draws out slowly. And so the sapphire ribbon is created as single crystal sapphire, which makes it very, very hard. And that worked extremely well. We put sapphire ribbons bonded them to the glass, and put the glass down in, and they never scratched. The only thing that could scratch them is if one of the operators had a diamond ring on it.
Yeah.
Wanted to scratch.
Something harder than that.
Other than that, never scratched. And so that solved that problem. The only difficulty with that was that it was an expensive item.
Right.
Imagine being sapphire, you're talking about adding $100 to the cost.
Right.
When the customer complained about the scratch window, I said, well, sapphire will solve that problem, but it's expensive. He says, you ought to make us take it. Sell it with nothing but sapphire. And that was the right thing to do. Mm-hmm. We couldn't bite the bullet because we were getting heat from our competitors who said they had ways of solving this problem and didn't require sapphire. Well, it turned out that wasn't really true. And if you look at any supermarket scanner today that has a window in it and it's been in place for a while and it's not being scratched, you can be sure that it has a sapphire window. My understanding is the sapphire windows have come down in cost, and every supermarket scanner that now has a glass window in it has a sapphire ribbon on top of it. Okay. So that was one of the major problems at the beginning, getting that scratch glass problem.
Scratching glass problem, right.
And we had to have, because the glass was replaced, because of the CDRH or Bureau's laser safety standards, if you have an opening where you can get into the scanner, they have to assume, you have to assume, as the manufacturer, that somebody is going to take a long stick with a mirror and go down there where the laser beam is and bounce it into his eye. That's what you have to assume. And so because of that, in addition to the window on the top, we had to have a second window below it, which, so that when you took the first window out to replace it, you still had a window blocking this guy with his mirror on a stick from getting in. So there were a number of things that we had. There were problems that eventually got solved.
Yeah.
But those are the major problems. We had sunlight problems because we found that sunlight coming in from a window behind the scanner, so why would that cause a problem? This light would come in, and here's the window, and the window has an edge, about that thick, has an edge, which when light hits it, it looks like a mirror.
Oh, it reflects
and it bounces right back into the detector. And I got called down, it was a Saturday, and George O'Connor, I believe it was the second level manager in Raleigh at the time. He says, Lee, you got to get on a plane and go to Dallas. It was, I think, Safeway was opening a big store there, and they're having all sorts of problems with sunlight. And so I got on it that afternoon, I got on a plane, I fly out of Dallas, and get down there, and I looked at him, and the solution was to put some film, like a small curtain, didn't block all the light, like a Polaroid film if they had it, but typically just a film that they'd hung up on the window to block that sunlight. That was a major issue, because that light would come in and just blind the scanner.
That was it, okay.